IA's dedication in ensuring that tangible treasures that immortalize our history are now accessible to the public is commendable.
Congratulations to the Intramuros administration. I wasn't expecting that the collection can be so amazing. It was really an awesome experience seeing all of this collection, and it's like 30% only of the collection. I wish to see more. Again, congratulations.
Masasabi ko ito ay malaking isang tagumpay kasi matagal namin nakatabihan, nakatago at hindi na i-display talaga sa public yan. Pangalawa, nagpalipat-lipat na ng location yan at ngayon, na-save natin.
Intramuros mahalaga para sa akin bilang Filipino kasi maraming bagay sa Pilipinas dito nagsimula sa Intramuros. Well, actually, more than reviving the structures, ang gusto ko talaga maintindihan ng tao kung anong kontribusyon ng Intramuros sa pagmuno ng Pilipinas. Kasi kung walang pagkilala, walang pagmahal, hindi siya mananatili. Fernando Siazid ako, Professor Emeritus sa Ateneo de Manila, sa Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Ang mensahe ko lang, dapat mas nuanced, mas complex ang ating pagtingin sa kasaysayan. Kasi mahirap itong black and white pagtingin sa kasaysayan. Masyado moralistic, basta Kastila masama. Dapat mas three-dimensional pagtingin sa kasaysayan.
Ang Intramuros sa akin ay mahalaga. Ito ay naniniwala ako, ito lang ang Old Manila na siya ay nagpalago ng Metro Manila. Ito yung prime mover ng urbanization din ng Metro Manila. Kung wala Intramuros, wala yung Metro Manila. Kasi dito nagsimula yung malalaking eskwelahan, malalaking building, lahat ng opisina ng gobyerno. Ito lang ang lugar na may walled city o Ciudad Morada na tinatawag. Kaya nandito yung mahalagang building, tao, dito lumago. Pero noong 1920 hanggang 1930, lumalabas na rin hanggang 1900, lumalabas na yung mayamang pamilya para magtayo ng malalaking bilya kasi masikip na rin Intramuros, mainit. Kailangan mag-expand, mga eskwelahan, lumabas na Intramuros. Tulad na ng UST, lumabas siya noong 1927. Tapos yung mga iba pa, Ateneo de Manila, nasunog siya noong 1932. Tapos lumabas din siya. Sana magpatuloy, tuloy-tuloy na maayos sa Intramuros. Pagdating ng present generation, maayos sa Intramuros na wala nang masyadong problema. Kasi sa ngayon may mga kakagibat pa rin problema. Nandiyan pa rin mga ibang informal settler na may na-relocate na kami, yung mga istansa. Siguro dadami pa ang turista sa atin kasi mabubuksan natin yung sa gitna. Tapos yung mga pavement ayos. Tapos yung mga travel ng tao, foreigner, mapapabilis kasi marami nagpapaliwanag. Sa ngayon, dumadami na. May bum bike na, may e-trike, may kalesa na. Marami na nag-aano sa Intramuros kasi ngayon, nagiging na to, parang tuwing may Manila tour, laging Intramuros ang priority ng Department of Tourism, Heritage. Ako nga pala si Mr. Reynaldo Cadiz, nagtatrabaho sa Intramuros ng almost 40 years, from 1979 hanggang ngayon. Naging restoration inspector din ako sa Intramuros kasi lahat ng mga ginagawang restoration, idinaanan ko from stone cutting, tapos pagbubuhos, proper document. Bago siya gawin, babaklasin muna namin yung mga lumang bato, tapos papalitan namin, mga may crack na, papalitan namin ng bago. Minsan, nung early part ng documentation namin, naglalagay din kami ng mga number sa bato para maibalik namin yung structure sa dating ayos. Napaka-importante Intramuros kasi ito yung ano natin eh. So, sa buhay ko napakahalaga to kasi dahil sa Intramuros nandito ako nagtrabaho 40 years, naging tanungan ako ng mga pangyayari dito na bagamat hindi ko inaabot iba, yung mga archaeology, tunnel na nahukay, mga artifacts, tinatanong ako, mga nahukay ng mass grave, halos lahat building na nirestore, kung ano ba yung mga dating opisina dito ng pre-war. Kasi nagbasa din ako ng mga libro na about sa archives namin. Tapos yung mga old photo, napakahusay ko mag-identify kasi kabisado ko yung old photo and then in new, yung pagkakaiba.
It represents our history. It contains a lot of traditions. It houses culture. It represents how we were or how we started as a nation. For me, it's a good place to be in because it represents my identity as a Filipino. It not only represents my profession or my advocacy, but it also represents the place where our trainees and graduates can further develop themselves. My name is Carmen Bettina Bulaong. You can call me Tina for short. I'm the Executive Director of Escuela Taller de Filipinas Foundation Incorporated, and I'm also a conservation architect. So, Escuela Taller is actually a foundation. It's a private, non-profit foundation which runs a technical vocational school or a training center where we build the capacities, especially of the out-of-school youth. Well, it's really a training program that where we train the out-of-school youth in 6 skills. For example, a person can become a craftsman in masonry or carpentry. We also offer courses in painting, plumbing, electrical, and metalworks. I think that the impact that we've had is we've helped already a lot of people to sort of win back their lives, you know, in a way that they're now more economically stable, they're able to support their families, etc. And the good thing is we now have the important participation of the youth in conserving our heritage. What I aspire for Intramuros is that it becomes an example, of how we can properly conserve our heritage. Not just the physical structures, not just the sites, but the intangibles, the culture, the traditions, which are very much connected to the structures and the sites, because we consider these structures and sites as containers of that culture. My hopes is that with our continuing partnership with IA, with the Intramuros administration, we will both be able to support each other in achieving that goal.
Culture is about what human beings have been able to develop for themselves, in terms of artifacts, in terms of knowledge, in terms of traditions and customs.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. I am your new host, Christian Gataan, and welcome to the 77th episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions, brought to you by the Intramuros Administration. Aside from Zoom, our session is also broadcasted live via Facebook and YouTube, so you may view us via these platforms as well. So, before we start, some house rules first. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for Zoom attendees, you may raise your questions via the Q&A button, while for Facebook viewers, you may raise your questions in the comment section. Please let us know if you want to remain anonymous, or you may opt to change your display name. Only those who have successfully registered and viewed on Zoom will be eligible to get a certificate. A feedback form will be emailed to you after the session. The certificate will be sent within a week. Also note that this webinar is recorded, and the recording shall be made permanently available in IA's social media channels. Okay, so for this afternoon, joining us all the way from Mexico, we have Dr. Kristyl Obispado to talk about Los Indios Filipinos, early Filipino migrant workers in Acapulco in the 16th and 17th centuries. Dr. Obispado is an assistant professor at the Department of History, University of the Philippines, Diliman. She holds a doctorate degree in history from El Colegio de Mexico, and her dissertation entitled The Pacific Sailors, Global Workers at and on the Age of the Spanish Empire, 1580s to 1640s, was granted the 2021 Dissertation Prize from the prestigious World History Association. Her areas of interest include Pacific trade, colonial Philippines, early global history, and colonial labor and migration. So, without further ado, I'd like to call on our speaker for today, Dr. Kristyl Obispado. Ma'am?
Thank you, Christian. I also would like to thank Intramuros Learning Sessions, especially Christian, Rancho, and Kimberly, for the invitation and for facilitating this event. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so my paper is about Los Indios Filipinos, early Filipino migrant workers in Acapulco in the 16th and 17th centuries. This presentation examines the phenomenon of early labor migration, starting with the processes and changes that unfolded in 1571, when Manila was designated as Spanish Philippines' capital city and became crucial in inaugurating the first globalization. As Dennis Flynn and Arturo Giraldes argued, the beginning of the global trade can be traced to the 16th century commercial activities in the Pacific, when the Manila galleons started to facilitate the direct and permanent link between Central and Southern America and Asia. We will attempt to reconstruct their working lives, the sailors, by following their journey from Manila to Acapulco and their stay there as migrant laborers, their occupations, salary and incentives, duration of service, and other work behavior patterns to explain why they opted to stay in Acapulco in the short or long term. For 50 years, from 1590 to 1640, the galleons were crewed by a conservative estimate of 5,000 documented sailors, 60% of which were Spanish and non-Spanish Europeans or extranjeros marineros, 9% grumetes españoles or Spanish apprentice, and 31% Indios grumetes or Asians and Spanish Americans, with native Filipinos comprising its majority. Interestingly, up to now, the Philippines supply 30% of the total number of global sailors. Out of the estimated 1,500 Indios Chinos who arrive in Acapulco as ship sailors and carpenters, this study identifies some 200 Indios Filipinos who work as port laborers in Acapulco between 1590 and 1640. Given the limitation of official records, this figure might not represent the total population of Filipino port workers. at that time. Among those who ended up working at the port, some stayed longer than others. A few kept returning, while the rest permanently settled in their new country, intermarried with the native population, and integrated themselves into Mexican society. This paper uses Indios Filipinos, the term Indios Filipinos, to distinguish the native Filipinos from other Indios Chinos. The grouping into Chino of all who arrive in Acapulco via the Manila galleon without differentiation whether they were people of Asia or other colored people such as black originating from Portuguese territories in Asia and Africa complicated the ancestry and legal status of the actual Spanish subjects from the Philippines. Historian Deborah Oropesa argues that their ambiguous category helped the Indios Chinos, Asians, in particular those from the Philippines, to assert their legal rights as Indios in Mexico, such as exemption from paying taxes, but at the same time, distinguish themselves from Mexican Indios to enjoy rights reserved for Spaniards, such as riding a horse and carrying weapons. However, the Spanish authority in Mexico also utilized the term Chino to their advantage, as can be seen in the work of another scholar, Tatiana Sejas. She claimed that the government's labeling of the natives from the Philippines as Chinos instead of Indios was a strategy to enslave them since, as non-Indios, the laws of 1542 would not be able to protect them. Lastly, in the work of the historian Nancy Van Dusen on the global Indios during the early colonial period, she examines the creation of Indioness as a process of local and global interactions, connecting east to west and west to east that deepened over the course of the 16th century. She emphasizes that aspects such as their status as free or attached subjects, physiognomic models, and language were used by Indios for self-identification or by others to label Indios. In the archival record, the native Filipinos who boarded the galleons were registered as Indios Chinos Grumetes, or Asian apprentice sailors and carpenters. In addition to the terms Indio or Indio Chino and their job description, their places of origin in the Philippines were sometimes added to their name. For example, Juan Malan de Pampanga or Chino Carpintero Bisaya, which can be classified into three groups: Manila and its suburbs that comprise of Parañaque, Longalo, Tondo, Pasig, Taguig, Malate, Quiapo. Second, Luzon area, Tagalog, Kapampangan, as well as Bicol provinces, including Cavite City, Binacaya, Lagyo, Laguna, Nagcarlan, Batangas, Malolos, Lubao, Bombon, and Batan in Albay. And finally, outside the Luzon region, such as Cebu, Masao, and other Visayan places. Their surnames can also help trace not only Philippines as their homeland, but the more localized area such as ang Agustin Longalo, Luis Pampango, and Miguel Bisaya. Another indicator that provides clues on these workers' background was the use of the Sangleyes instead of the more general category Indios Chinos. Although the Sangleyes originally came from Fujian, China, some members of this trading population permanently stayed in the Philippines and intermarried with the natives. Finally, the attachment before the names of some of these Indios Chinos of the term Don, which in the early period an honorific title reserved for the native rulers. The colonial structures of Philippine tribute and labor, tailored partly for the needs of the galleon trade, paved the way for the Philippine Indios to participate in various ways, from providing labor and materials for its ship construction, working as port workers, sailors, and soldiers, to dispensing the galleon with provisions and merchandise. Moreover, the labor form in Manila, Cavite, and adjacent provinces gave the natives the chance to voluntarily migrate to other parts of the Spanish Empire, such as Acapulco and the rest of New Spain, or the present-day Mexico. The Spanish crown provided incentives for its royal servants, especially the sailors and soldiers. such as the opportunity to participate in the trade. Simultaneously, other natives were forced to board the galleon to comply with polo y servicios by serving as crew or servants. Okay. In the Philippine archipelago, it was observed that the descriptions of the color of natives, viewed from the lens of Spaniards, elicited subjectivity and contradictions, since the degree of whiteness or darkness of one's skin color usually depended on how sympathetic to the people the account was. This bias was consistent with the 16th century outlook and apparatus of the colonial powers, which conveniently used external characteristics such as complexion, language, marks, and other signs that were subjected to the environment for them to decide either to discriminate against the subjects or provide them with legal protections. It is interesting to note that at the port of Acapulco, the survey of workers' body indicated that the primary interest was its utility for labor. The depiction of two Indios chinos grumetes from Pampanga in Cebu are as follows. Agustin del Pino, Chino grumete, son of Martin del Pino, a native of Pampanga, 24 years old, of good shape and brown complexion, has a scar on the outer end of the left eye, and Diego de la Cruz, Chino grumete, son of Pedro Rama, a native of Cebu, 28 years old, of good shape and brown complexion, has a pinkish birthmark on the right part of the nose next to the eye on the same side. The inspection of their bodies was done as part of the employment process. On the site, people of various origins such as Spanish and non-Spanish Europeans, Indios Americanos, which means native Mexicans, Peruvians, and Caribbeans, and Indios Chinos, blacks and mulattoes, could be found working together. They had a standard body type and characteristics that corresponded to the labor demands of the galleon trade. In a body inspection of laborers at Acapulco port in the 1620s, among the 70 individuals inspected, moreno was the typical color used to describe them, even though they came from Spain, Portugal, Peru, Mexico, or the Philippines. Of course, this complexion may have been due to sun exposure that come with their working environment. Secondly, being in good shape and having younger age were the common qualities among these workers to ensure that they could comply with the labor demands at port and sea. Lastly, scars and body marks were identified as distinguishing characteristics, especially among sailors. Similar to the Carrera de Indias in the Atlantic side of the Spanish Empire, a detailed description was necessary to avoid confusion, as personal appearance was required when they collected unpaid salary or to locate them quickly in case of desertion. For the detailed description of their journey, let me cite another study I've done regarding the life of sailors aboard the ship and their consumption. Now, in the first 2 months, an abundance of fresh food accompanied by copitas de tuba greeted them aboard. At every port from Mariveles, Bataan to Palapa, Samar, where they had to stop and refill their bombones de bamboo, a bamboo container, the native produce constantly replenished the ship. So they were brought to the naws as gifts by the town officials and the religious. For example, while anchored near Mariveles Channel, small paraos arrived loaded with fruits by the town corregidor or magistrate. As the galleon passed between Banton Island and the tip of Marinduque, the latter abounded with highly nutritious fruits and root crops, wild boars, buffaloes, and other animals. So they had to send champan to restock. While in Albay, the alcalde mayor or provincial governor regularly gifted the now general with dozens of pigs and goats, hundreds of chickens, and basketful fruits. Finally, in Ticao, Masbate, to quote Carreri, the ship transformed into a floating orchard because of excess and variety of fruits and vegetables, not to mention the pigs and chickens brought from the nearby islands in Caracoas. Once they reached the San Bernardino Strait and entered the open sea, feasts celebrating saints' days and founders of religious orders were reduced to simple meals and drinks, followed by treats of sweets and candies. their diet reflected those of Philippine natives in the 17th century, consisting of rice, carabao meat, pork, salted fish, local wines such as tuba and pangasi or rice wine, kamote, banana, and palm flour. But as a staple part of their meal, it's rice and bizcocho. Okay. So that's what they're eating from Manila to Acapulco. Now we can compare them, their diet, the other way, no, from Acapulco to Manila. Okay, so to compare, we have the now San Juan Bautista, which according to a report by a port official of Acapulco, on its voyage to the Philippines in 1641, carried merchandise and provisions necessary for the expected 500 people. Livestock, essential to provide food or carry people and goods and exchange commodities, also partook provisions while at the port. For example, horses from Mexico City. Of course, the example that you can see is from Perez Malaina, so it's in the Carrera de Indias. But we can compare, no, since there was a constant communication. So, for example, horses from Mexico City to Acapulco transported soldiers assigned to serve in the Philippines as part of the latter's transportation expenses of 15 pesos. There were also mares and horses to be sent to the Philippines and fed with maize priced at 2.5 pesos each, panega and forage brought from the other town near Acapulco by cargo animals such as mules, with each load charged for 2 pesos. Before embarking the horses into the ship, they paid the groom an amount of 3 pesos to take care of them and a farrier 4 pesos to shoe them with iron plates and perform bloodletting, no, for the health of the horse. It was a practice to slaughter animals such as ox in the corral of the supplier's farm and then bring their meat to the port. However, because of the distance, they usually arrive spoiled. So they opted to transport the steer's ox at the treasurer's expense, with 12 pesos being the final value of each. For the food supply, according to Sales Colin, the Viceroyalty of New Spain, including Puebla, Mexico City, Veracruz, and Acapulco, produced 80% of them. For instance, lard, legumes, dried foods, cheese, white and brown bread, and salted meat, such as fish, bacon, and ham, came from Puebla, while Spain provided a part of it, no, wine, wheat flour, oil, and white vinegar. The same thing could be observed in the Philippines, where the galleons passed were largely populated and prosperous provinces with fertile land such as Mindoro, Marinduque, and Ibabaw Samar. As mentioned above, the local officials and religious orders supplied the ships with provisions. This must have been done by mobilizing the natives to procure them, but they were not accounted for in official records since they were donations, no, or gifts. Furthermore, with its strategic location, it was along this route that a contraband trade occurred. It can explain the regular gifts of the provincial governors and other officials to the ship captain. So it was not until they reached Cuyuca, another town near Acapulco, that these people aboard the ship would receive socorro or help, no, that they would receive, that they would be able to eat healthily again. The other picture on the left side, so that's how they transfer or transport the plants, no? The upper, it's the semillas or the seeds, and then the lower, but of course not the plants. Okay. So after 2 or 3 months of the voyage, only dried meat was left among the ship's provisions. Whether boiled or stewed, the meat they ate had to be crushed before putting them into their mouth. As a 17th century sailor observed, being a sailor is a person's choice, rather of one's mouth. As I have experienced from our feasting, one's teeth should be resistant to the hardest material known, to endure even just for a month. And if your teeth survive, then comes the test of your stomach, where one could not say no either. As their food stocks became exhausted, so were their bodies. The Spanish king had attempted several times to address the problem of scarce food, which the sailors who had to work for the entire trip kept receiving. The crew service varied from having to attend to monotonous jobs of watchkeeping, maintaining the sail, and fixing the rigs to being alert during an emergency such as storm, shipwreck, or pirate attack. Unsurprisingly, upon arrival at Acapulco port, they were sick, almost naked, and worn out. To end the common practice of not providing them their food rations and entire salary, a royal order was issued, and it was reasoned out that while the sailors carried the burden for everyone aboard, all they received were insufficient and spoiled food. Diseases that seize people in 7 or 8 months lying at sea, sometimes near the line, sometimes cold, sometimes temperate, and sometimes hot, which is enough to destroy a man of steel, much more flesh and blood, which a sea had bathed in different food. These are the famous lines from Gemelli Carrere. I'm sure you're familiar with him, Italian traveler, who sum up the people's experience, no, in the Manila Acapulco journey. Consequently, different diseases started to afflict or kill them. The most prevalent was Sarna peruna, scaby, which resulted from excessive salt intake, no? Because that's the way to preserve their food. The other two threatening conditions had become particularly virulent as they approached American coast, verben and mal de onda, or scurvy. Lack of vitamin B1 caused the first one, which swells the body and kills the person by simply talking. On the other hand, scurvy resulted from vitamin C deficiency and affected sailors whose fresh food diet stopped once they exited the Philippines. Scurvy fills the mouth with sores, rots the gums, and make molars and teeth fall. They believe that they must set foot on the ground to heal it. We don't know exactly the percentage of sailors affected by these diseases or injured while working. However, profiling their faces and bodies done by the ship captains for documentation can provide us with some information. They had wounds of various sizes and healing stages, from deep cuts to scars. The detailed descriptions include wart marks on the throat, scar on Adam's apple. This is so specific, no? Scar on Adam's apple. Swelling on the joint of left hand's index finger. Wound on left hand's fleshy part. Disjointed and split thumb tip. Bump on the left eye's tear duct. Broken or missing tooth, and wound mark on one's glabella, outer ear, or the jaw. So again, these detailed descriptions are important in case someone deserts the port. These features, which most of the registered sailors in the 17th century Spanish Pacific shared, give us as well a glimpse of their daily life aboard, which included diseases and accidents. As an illustration, more than 10% of the 70 crew members recruited to serve in the ship in the 1620 had scars left by smallpox. From the 16th to the 18th century, no professional doctors were aboard because of lack of funding, absence of universities, and distance from the Iberian Peninsula. Instead, they had cirujanos del mar, or ship surgeons, sangradores, bloodletters, and barbers who owned surgery, bloodletting, and barbershop instruments. So it's the barbers who serve as surgeons. No? Would you imagine the state of their health aboard? In addition, the members of religious orders also administered the port hospitals, attended to the sick, and supervised the feeding of the sick, ingestion of their medicines, and dictation of their last will. They took a central role owing to their knowledge of medicines, most of which were botanical. With time to spare, the sailors turned to routine assignments such as watching, pumping the water out, maintaining the sail, etc., etc. If it rained, they would collect the water and fill their bombones, bamboo containers. And then the youngest members of the crew were the pages or pajes. Their chores included sweeping and cleaning the deck, chanting greetings for the morning and evening, praying for the souls in purgatory at night, helping in the stove to prepare food and serve the table for the crew. So these pajes were of ages 10 to 14 years old. They were so young. And what you can see in the picture, for example, this sunglass, it lasts for 30 minutes. So each paje was assigned to invert it 4 times, no? Interval of 2 hours. And then the other picture, this one is naipes. So it's a common way to distract themselves, playing naipes. Okay. In addition to diseases, hunger, hard labor, and other difficulties the sailors had experienced on the journey from the Philippines to New Spain, there were also storm, shipwreck, pirate attack, infestation of locusts, cockroaches, lice, accidents, and of course, death. The mortality rate was so high that the other metaphor used for the galleon was a tomb in addition to prison and hell. So to give some examples, in 1602, out of 260 passengers of Jesus Maria, only 16 survived disease. While in 1606, in a flagship, 80 people were thrown to the sea, while others died upon reaching Acapulco, including high officials. In 1609, both the flagship Remedios and Admiral ship San Antonio encountered severe storms. So Remedios was able to return to Manila. San Antonio was lost at sea with all its crewmen and passengers. In 1620, out of 488 people who boarded the flagship, only half survived. So during and after these unfortunate circumstances, the labor of the sailors was much needed. Following the storm, the crew had to repair any damage in the ship to continue with the voyage, pump the water out, and recover whatever they could of the merchandise, animals, and other objects scattered everywhere. If they were fortunate to survive a shipwreck, they had to bury the dead. So I think it's the hardest job, no? Because if more than 50% of the people would die, when they already reach the port, so burying them would really be a hard job after 5 months of the difficult travel. Now let's go to their job history. As mentioned above, for a period of 50 years, from 1590 to 1640, around 200 Indios Filipinos were identified in Contaduría records of Acapulco to have received salaries as port workers. While many of them appeared to be part of the Manila galleon crews, others had no record of arrival in Acapulco, suggesting that both the port officials in Cavite and Acapulco did not register their names. This practice was prevalent in the initial years of the operation of the treasurer of Acapulco, when they simply counted and loosely categorized the natives as Indios Chinos. It is also possible that Manila or other ship officials concealed them as their servants or as contraband slaves to be sold in Acapulco, where their price was higher. Table 1 shows the favorable position of Indios Filipinos as port workers in terms of remuneration. To begin with, they receive a higher salary as port workers that could range from 100 to 550 pesos than as galleons grumetes, which was fixed at 50 pesos. It was even higher than a salary of a Spanish sailor, 150 pesos. Given the risky voyage they experienced, it would be hardly surprising if they chose to stay. The daily wage of carpenters, cookers, and masons in Acapulco was also comparable to, if not higher than those in Seville, Spain, which ranged between 200 and 306 maravedis during the period under study. Finally, if one compares the salaries in Table 1 to what the Indios Filipinos receive in Cavite, either as forced or free laborers, the Acapulco rate was 4 times higher or more. As reported by Captain Sebastian de Pineda in 1619, Cavite woodcutters received 7 to 8 reales per month, while the more skilled ones earned 10 to 12 reales. It indicates that they could earn in Acapulco within a day what they had to work for several weeks in Cavite. Worse, the workers' wages in the latter, as reported by Pineda, had not been paid for 5 years. For the Filipino port workers, equally crucial as the salary differential was the opportunity to participate in the galleon trade. Through its various networks, the galleon trade promoted the mobility of people and gave greater access to goods, labor, and other intangible productions such as language and culture. The participation of Indios Filipinos in this commerce was not limited to labor supply. As they traveled from Manila to Acapulco, while some natives had no clothes to protect themselves from the journey's coldness, others had the opportunity to carry a trunk, a chest, with merchandise such as Chinese fabrics to sell in New Spain. If we want to reconstruct the life story of low-ranking seafarers from the 16th century to the present, their backs, their most valuable property, would give us a glimpse. In the current period, there's this unique tradition among the Filipino overseas workers, global seafarers, of bringing home a cardboard container which they fill with basic and luxurious things for their family. So I watched one on YouTube, the balikbayan box of a sailor, and well, it's different from what's in the picture, but it says that it contained Godiva chocolates, Dove soap, Nescafe Gold, towel, shawl, raincoat, perfumes such as Victoria's Secret, Chanel rubber shoes that cost 11,000 Hong Kong dollars, Michael Kors watch, C15 cell phone, I don't know what it means, Egyptian ship steering wheel coin, and other things, you name them. No? But what does this box signify? So for us, balikbayan, translated into English, to return home, since it's a box carried by a seafarer who would eventually return home. To know what could be inside the sailors' and passengers' trunk or balikbayan bags, they could range from luxurious items to cheap and everyday items. For example, when the galleon Concepcion sank in Saipan because of storm, its 400 passengers died. In 1987, a group of archaeologists led by William Mathers recovered these cargoes. They were shown in the 1990 publication of National Geographic, which comprised of 1,300 pieces of gold jewelry, 32 golden chains, 997 gold buttons, ruby, diamond, and sapphire over the cinnamon bark, a shoe-shaped pendant made of gold and encrusted with 41 diamonds used to contain perfume, and emerald over clothes. So these are some of the luxurious items I was talking about. Religious images made of ivories were also a common export product via the galleon trade. Now we can see here an image of the child Jesus, probably done by a Sangley worker. And we can notice that it has some Asian features, no? Now, it's time to examine the backs of the 16th and 17th century sailors. Its description can vary from a simple backs with a lack, because if we compare, so these are the, shucks, sorry. Oh, I'm lost. So, these are the baul, no? The chest, also used as furniture in, which we can find in middle class or high class homes in New Spain and in Europe or Asia. But of course, that's not the reality for the sailors. So we can compare. I think it's most likely this is their baul, not their backs or their chest that can be made of leather or wood. So its description can vary from a simple box with a lock and a key to a suitcase made of leather to an enormous trunk weighing as much as 25 pounds. The box itself could be sold for 2 pesos and 5 tumines each pound, and each sailor was permitted to carry goods in their chest worth 60 pesos, raised to 100 pesos in 1608. So remember, their salary was 150 pesos, so and the grumete salary was 80 pesos. So it's actually equivalent to their salary, 1 year salary, no? Just to carry a box. But as yours stated, a chest could contain as much as 200 pounds of silk or 1,140 pairs of stockings. Given that a pair of stocking could cost 2 pesos, the capital invested by sailors should go way beyond the limit. Until the 1630s, in principle, the sailors could preserve the privilege of gaining profits from trade and letting their chests untouched. For their cargoes, they were mostly textiles, especially silk and cotton, were either raw materials or finished products such as mantas de algodón or cotton blankets, mantas de cordoncillo, braided blankets, mantas pintadas, painted blankets, mantas de sangley blankets, white cloth, moro blankets, most of which were made in the Philippines. Huh? They were local products. And then we have also white silk and sinabafa. Sinabafa was also cotton made good made in the Philippines, no? Fine cotton. Okay. An example of an Indio Chino who trafficked goods was Tomas Pangasinan, whose name hints the geographic extent of native participation in the galleon enterprise, no? Pangasinan. So in 1594, he paid a tax of 13 pesos for the Chinese fabrics that he brought aboard the ship of San Pedro. The goods of the Indios Chinos, principally the grumetes, usually carried descriptions such as common, ordinary, and imitation. Pacific trade expert Mariano Bonyalian argued that since the fabrics from Europe were more expensive, the raw silk and cotton made the clothing exported through the galleons fell massively. It catered to the needs of the general population in America or present-day Mexico. He adds that through informal networks, the Pacific trade expanded not only from the Philippines to New Spain, but also from to the prohibited areas of Peru and other parts of Central America. By opening their highly valued chests, we could also get a glance of the life narratives of the Pacific sailors. Perhaps we can imagine how they appear. We can easily always find silver, no, in their chests, Chinese or sangley shoes, Japanese katana, Ilocos manta, Macanese losa, Ruan shirt, Caribbean stockings, Romance book, compass, oyster catcher, a fang of a giant beast, reliquary wax, among others. No, so this is a cosmopolitan individual. Some were old and torn, others new, some for sale, others for consumption or resale and reuse. In Acapulco, the occupational activities paralleled those in Manila and Cavite. Consequently, the skills and experience of the Indios Filipinos in woodcutting, carpentry, blacksmithing, and navigation put them at an advantage to be regularly hired at the port of Acapulco. As shown in this table, the 50-year job records of these migrants, temporary and permanent, reveal some information suggestive of their working lives. Due to the prospects of earning a higher salary, increasing revenue through trade, and better working conditions, some of the Indios Filipinos decided to stay in Acapulco. Among the port workers listed in the table, the common occupations of these with the longest years of service are in carpentry and warehouse. For example, Francisco Insan, he's not there. He had worked for 3 decades or more as carpenter. He started in 1599 with an annual salary of 100 pesos. This rate was significantly lower compared to the standard 150 peso salary of a sailor. However, after 10 years of working, his pay doubled and increased to 200 pesos, as he also had served as overseas of Indios Chinos and as foreman intermittently. He kept receiving the same amount of salary until 1631, with service gaps in 1604, 1605, and 1613 and 1616. Other workers whose job records span decades are Juan Cagayan, who worked as carpenter for 31 years. Alonso Hernandez, as carpenter, storekeeper, and apprentice sailor or grumete for 22 years. Diego Chamara, carpenter and sawyer for 20 years. Juan Pineda, carpenter for 16 years. Mateo de Larencio, storekeepers for 14 years. Bartolome Siguat, storekeeper for 14 years. Diego Dagalan, carpenter for 11 years, and Juan Martin, carpenter for 11 years. Given this laborers' experience back in the Philippines, no, it was expected that they would quickly adapt to their new workplace in Acapulco and stay for long, if not permanently. In the case of those who serve as almacenero, storekeeper, despite the lower salary, it gave them a gateway to those who serve. It gave them a gateway to the port warehouse and its supplies, as well as ship merchandise and provisions that could value between 5,000 and 50,000 pesos. This means that they could have a strategic position to buy and sell goods legally or otherwise. Okay. In contrast with the long-term port workers discussed above, are the Indios Filipinos who, after a brief work experience, 6 months to 1 year in Acapulco, returned to the Philippines. We have Agustin Longalo, who worked for a year as a port carpenter and grumete, then decided to go back to the Philippines by boarding the galleon with the same position. And like other Asians that temporarily hired their service while passing the winter in the port, it was also a practice among native Filipino crew to stay and take jobs from the arrival of ships around November, with departure in March. However, others stayed longer than a year, possibly to earn more money before returning to the Philippines. Another interesting work behavior pattern among the port workers is serving in the Manila galleons between their jobs at the port. For instance, Alonso Bato began working at the port's iron foundry in 1606, left the job 5 months after in 1607, and instead he enlisted as grumete for a round-trip voyage, Acapulco, Manila, then from Manila to Acapulco. And when he came back to Acapulco, the port officials rehired him in the foundry where he stayed for the next 10, 12 years. He has no record of any occupational activity for some years, and then later he boarded the galleon San Francisco as grumete bound for Manila. It is uncertain when he returned to New Spain, but it is documented that from 1611 to 1612, he had been working at the port's warehouse. The next year, he was aboard again the ship, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, as grumete on his way back to the Philippines. So as shown through sample cases in this section, the Indios Filipinos in the port of Acapulco remain because of the attractions of a higher salary, better working conditions, and other sources of income such as participation in the galleon trade. If I still have time, for the last part of my presentation, I would like to reflect on sailors' global lives by focusing on Juan del Campo, an Indio marinero from Manila. He was the son of Don Juan, an Indio natural from Manila, and Catalina Mendez. He had served in the Carrera del Pacifico as a sailor before going to Macau in the Kingdom of China aboard one of the Spanish ships. Upon arrival, he worked as a sailor for Don Diego Martinez, which lasted for 1.5 years. Once they reached Portuguese India, he took another trip aboard the same ship. Unfortunately, those aboard got lost in the land of the Moros in Malacca, who took their fortune and enslaved Juan del Campo for 1.5 years. After being ransomed, he returned to Portuguese India only to be enslaved and rescued again from the Moros. Somehow, he ended up in Sevilla, where he asked to return to his land via the Pacific galleons. Campo claimed he was poor and had no food except the ration he received from his work. He then begged to give him a license to embark on one of the ships to New Spain as a sailor or drummer, not tambor. Then in 1609, the Casa de Contratación de India in Seville was ordered to give Campo the necessary documents to return to his land through the fleet sailing to New Spain. However, they denied his request unless he provided information on why he was single and wanted to travel. And to track all the information provided above, the House of Trade in Seville had to look for witnesses to verify that Campo was an Indio natural from Manila, not an enslaved person and not married in Spain. So those who testified had met him in Manila more than a decade ago. For example, we have Juan Francisco, a 50-year-old sailor of the Carrera de Indias of Sanlúcar. Francisco and Campo had already been residing in Spain and had known each other for 12 years. According to Francisco, he met Campo and his parents in Manila and proved they were Indios, indeed Indios naturales. So we can see the connection, and their movement globally. The other witness was the 40-year-old Don Diego Martinez from Alcazar, with whom Campo worked from Macau to Portuguese India. The third one was an Indio natural from Portuguese India, while the last one was a resident in Spain and had known him for 6 months and sure that he was not married. Unfortunately, the document is incomplete, no? And we could only hope that he succeeded in returning to Manila. But this yearning of Campo to return to his homeland was also evident among other Filipino sailors. As we've seen, no, in the pattern of work behavior discussed above. So Indios Filipinos who returned to the Philippines after a brief work experience, 6 months to 1 year in Acapulco. And then we also saw others stayed longer than a year, possibly to earn more money before returning to the Philippines. And I'm skipping the... Okay, so an observed work behavior pattern shows that some regularly crossed the Pacific and spent 1 or 2 years in Manila and Acapulco. There's a high chance that the purpose of visiting Manila was to obtain Chinese goods and earn more profits. There are also cases where these migrant workers return to the Philippines in an infrequent interval, for example, of 5, 10 or more years. Perhaps we can say that the strongest manifestation of their global lives, at least for the Indios Filipinos, is the yearning or nostalgia of to return home. But who knows, perhaps the same is true among other sailors. In fact, aboard the ship, the sailors with their chest or baul would create a temporary rancho or a space where they could group based on their paisanaje, their country of origin. So to conclude, okay, I'm running out of time. As we sought to reconstruct the sailors' lives, the image of a global worker gradually took form. They were highly mobile individuals who filled different posts freely or forcefully across and beyond the Spanish realm's limits and took advantage of the economic opportunities presented by the global trade. With the Campo's journey, which followed the more complicated Manila, Macau, Malacca, Seville, Mexico, Manila routes, he was caught in the middle of intricate networks continuously growing and overlapping. The footprints they left from the Carrera de India to Atlantic side to Carrera de Pacifico, the Manila galleon, to VOC of the Dutch, created a distinctive landscape of the thing we call global. But just like the modern overseas Filipino workers, Ocampo's test, the former Balikbayan box would show that the ultimate end of this journey would always be home. Okay, thank you. That's the end of my presentation. For the sources I use, so if you're interested, we will post a little bit. It's recorded, so you can go back to this part later on. But yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, ma'am, for that insightful presentation. And I think it's still very timely to look back on the lives of early sailors and migrant workers, as in the present, we still have a lot of Filipino migrant workers, and especially sailors. So for our viewers via Zoom, we have a chat button and we also have a Q&A button at the bottom of our screen. So if you have questions, just send it here. Okay, so we have one question from Jose Casella Jr. Are there any cultural impacts made by Filipino migrants to Mexican culture? And he also has another question, any traces of Filipino communities in Mexico today?
For the first question, there are lots of studies already done. I think we have a participant here, Dr. Dr. Cautemo. He had done study about that. What is the name of this? Paulina. I'm forgetting the name. But Dr. Paulina Machuca. Paulina Machuca. So they made studies regarding the cultural impacts made by Filipino migrants to Mexican culture. To mention a few, for example, tuba, the culture of making tuba. We could trace it back to 16th, 17th century. along the western coast of Mexico, we could still find palapa houses. So actually last week I went to Puebla and then I saw this market area in Puebla and it says Parian, Parian area. So I mean, until now it's known as Parian, and they have the idea if you say Parian, of course, it's where you buy and sell things. When it comes to food, well, we have mango, I think sampalok, what else? Yeah, actually we have the cultural exchange between Mexico and the Philippines. It was so rich that we could still find the impact of it. You just have to go to Acapulco and you would find there a family named the Maganda family. Somebody did an interview with that family, but right now I wouldn't remember the title of the book. And then Traces of Filipino Communities in Mexico Today. I think it would be good to read the newest article that came out last March or April. The title is The Genetic Legacy of the Manila Galleon. So he traced there the percentage of Asians, their descendants in not just in Acapulco, but in Mexico overall. The Filipinos are considered good workers by the Spaniards. I think this question is a bit vague. Are they highly sought after? We have to put into context that the period, it's 16th century. It's the time where a lot of Indians were dying because of the disease. So, well, the Filipinos were skilled workers. I mean, we grew up in a maritime. We grew up with a maritime tradition, and we basically live in a maritime environment. So we knew the labor. We knew how to be skilled sailors, how to be carpenters. But we have the tradition of panday. So all these labors were valued in New Spain, especially during that time that there was depreciation of their population. Do we exchange? Yes.
In connection with the first question, I'm sorry to cut.
Okay, go.
Okay, there's another question. Because of this established contact with Mexico, would you say that the Philippines has a stronger connection with Mexico? And are we more Latin American than Asian because of the heavy exchange and trading with Mexico?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry. Because of this established contact with Mexico, would you say that the Philippines has a stronger connection with Mexico? And are we more Latin American than Asian because of the heavy exchange and trading with Mexico?
Yeah, there was a conference actually last year I attended, and then I said the exact same phrase but differently. I said that the Filipinos are actually more Latin Americans than Spaniards, but we couldn't compare it with Asians because of course we are Asians, So that one is it cannot be questioned. But we can look at it from different angle. That if we compare, it's a conference where Dr. Kautemak also attended, and I said that I think that the Filipinos are more Latin Americans than Spaniards just because of the distance, of Mexico to the Philippines. If we compare it with the distance that we have with Iberian Peninsula. So maybe from that perspective, but again, I would like to say that this question is hard to answer, because how could you measure Asianness, or how Asian you were? So maybe we can mention some examples, but there's no definite answer.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a question from Dr. Cuauhtemoc Villamar. Do you consider your work in line of the history from below, according to George Lefebvre, Hobsbawm, or E.P. Thompson? This approach can have important effects on the analysis of the Manila Galleon. So far, there are too many studies about the riches and luxuries. Congratulations for your detailed and comprehensive work.
Thank you, Kwao, for us attending. It's an honor that you are here with me today. I could say yes, but I want to be careful with the approach that I'm using, because I wouldn't consider my work as from a Marxist perspective. Would be a different thing. That yes, it's a study from below. It's the study of the lowest ranking workers, so of the Manila galleons. I mean, Manila galleons it has a big impact, a very strong impact, even until up to the present time. But I wouldn't consider it, for example, Marxist, because of course Marxist study, it's coming from another context, from the 19th century context, and my period was too early. So I would rather have a more I would rather use a more open up approach, like what used by Marcel van Linden, where he's not really that strict with the categorization of the workers, not giving emphasis too much on for example, factory workers, even the slaves, even the self-employed or underemployed people, they were part of this of this group, So yeah, when it comes to, I think those two aspects, when it comes to period and the categorization of laborers, I would rather go to the side of Marcel van Linden, that it could have its origin as early as 14th century, when this globalized world started to take form or take shape.
Okay, so we have another question in connection to the first question again. Do they have from Nina Casela, do they also have places in Acapulco named after Filipinos or something related to the Philippines?
There should be, but I couldn't think right now. But just like what I said, for example, the Palapa area, Parian area. But right now, I couldn't think right now of us. Just like Mexico, Pampanga, is that what you are referring to? Like Mexico, Pampanga. So do we have like Manila in Mexico? There must be, but for now, I couldn't think except of these smaller areas. But I will look into that. Okay.
Okay, then. Thank you. We have another question. The age of sail was also a golden age of piracy. The route of ships was well established and the schedules for sailing were predictable. Would that make the ships sailing to Acapulco easy targets for pirates?
Yeah. Actually, I couldn't remember. I couldn't give the exact number, of ships attacked by the European pirates, but we have enemies from within. Well, we have of course attack of pirates from the southern part of the Philippines and also from the larger Southeast Asia. Of course, if imagine a galleon carrying silver worth how much 500,000 pesos legally, but of course when you really investigate how much or how much it's carrying, it could actually reach 2 to 6 million pesos. So galleon trade is it's a big business. We have the connivance of officials, the highest ranking officials from Manila in Mexico to the lowest, like the sailors, because of this contraband trade. Actually, it's more valued because of the contraband trade than the regular sale, and the expected profit of 500,000, because it's not true. It's not just 500,000. It's more than that. So of course, I think there are books that especially tackle the piracy attacks, but we have Dutch, we have English in the 16th century and early 17th century that kept their eye on the galleon, especially if it's already entering the Philippine water. No, it's so easy to attack it and get the silver.
So in connection to your answer, ma'am, would it be safe to say that illicit trade is very prevalent at that time? And can we determine the extent of how Indios Filipinos are involved in this? If majority of the illicit traders are Indios Filipinos? Or...
Yeah. Well, just like everyone else, the Filipinos were very involved. No, it's like 100% of their effort. No? They would participate because it wouldn't happen without the participation of everybody. Everybody's participating, no, in the contraband trade or the illicit trade. That's why when I think Quiroga was the popular investigator. He's the one who stopped the contraband trade in 1630s, and as an impact, I think in the next 2 years there was no trade, and it as a result, the people residing in the Manila, the Mexicans, the elite, the native elites, they didn't have anything for the next 2 years. So it's a no not to say no to contraband trade, because it's the life of the it's the life of the colony for the period 16th, 17th century. Now, of course, I wouldn't say the same for 18th century because that's not my topic. But 16th, 17th century, yeah.
Okay, we have another question. He's asking, how did they dispose of the bodies if a sailor died while in the middle of the ocean?
They would wrap it with white kubihang, white cover, and then they would throw it to the sea because they couldn't stock the body, no, aboard the ship for the longest time. I mean, without even the cadaver, the galleon already smelled like hell. So what else if they started and many people were dying. I mean, once they left the Philippines, and once they, like 1 month away from Mexico, people would be dying. So half of those people would be dying, and it's not a practical way to save their body, no. So they had to be thrown into the sea.
Okay. So in connection with that, you mentioned earlier that scars were used as distinguishing body marks. Are scars usually from punishments or from diseases?
From various reasons. No, it's like the history. It's like it could serve as their job history aboard the galleon, because it's for disease like smallpox. It could be from the accident. It could be from insect bites. So it could be from a lot of things. No, that's how dangerous their job was during that time in 17th century.
Okay, we have another question in connection with that. Was there a specific penal code for sailors? How were mutiny, theft, etc. dealt with?
Mutiny was rare after 17th century. No, at the start of the 17th century, it's rare already because it's already established. No, I mean, unlike, for example, the period of discovery when they had not established yet the regular route between Mexico and the Philippines. So we would see there was a lot, no, of mutiny, but from 1570s, 1580s, it's not that. No, it's not that strong anymore.
But corporal punishments were being practiced back then.
Corporal punishment. When they were about to reach Acapulco, like past California and then Acapulco, there would be a great celebration. No, when they started seeing the signs of the land, it means that they were a few weeks away from the land or from the port of Acapulco. They celebrate this I forgot the name, but it's like a game, no? So while they were aboard, those who were committing sins, not Inquisition type of sins, no, not the one punishable by Inquisition, but light. For example, they rob food, because robbing food, stealing food was prevalent during that time. So they would list down what's the crime or sin of each of the passenger and of each of the passengers and crew members, and then those, depending on how heavy the punishment would be, or depending the crime that one's committed. So for example, if you have heavier crimes, they would cover your eyes, and then there would be a parade. So you will pass like parading, and then you would pass a group of people with their bat, and then they would bat you. So that's like a corporal punishment, but that's one kind of punishment. And then another type would be, well, you will pay, no? You would pay. I mentioned that there was a game, naipes. So many people were actually losing. So by the time that they left the galleon, the money they were supposed to earn, they already spent it for playing naipes and for losing. No, that's why. Yeah, those were the types of corporal punishment.
Okay, so we have one question here related to Pride Month. Were there accounts of homosexual sailors, or is being a sailor an issue of gender?
Okay. Yeah, I think 10 years ago I presented something like that. I tried to study that, but of course, yeah, we wouldn't call it. I mean, the term that we would use, not like, oh,
Yes.
they were homosexuals, and there
Yes.
would be this the judgment that we have like right now. But it's common because one, they were all almost there were females aboard the ship, but it was believed that they might cause accident. It might anger the god, so they were trying to hide actually the women, and they were few, no, in number. So it's actually a masculine world. And then second, for example, the relationship of the pahes with the ship captain, no? There could be like my protege, but not only my protege, but also I'm referring to Spanish pahes, not to the Indios pahes, no, not to the Filipino native, but those who were being groomed to be the next ship captain or ship pilots, they were pahes brought by the captain. So there's a possibility, no, of that relationship, not just among the sailors, but even among the soldiers, no, of the period. So it's actually common, no. I don't know the degree of judgment because I didn't study it, but it's pretty common. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. How would you describe the religious routine while on the sea? Were there masses every day, or
Yeah.
other events?
Yeah. Every week, no, every Sunday there would be mass, or if there's a feast, if they're celebrating the feast of a certain religious order. But yeah, it's also the chance for everyone to celebrate, to cut the boring life they had, and to eat chocolate, no, dulces, yeah, because especially the priests, they were keeping their dulces, their candies, so that when it's time to have a mass, to celebrate a mass, or to celebrate a feast, I think that's where the joy of the people were coming from, no, eating the candies. So yeah, but yeah, they were pretty religious. They were, I mean, they were a combination of so many things. They were religious. They were playing games, because we have to imagine that the kind of life they had, aboard the galleon. They were isolated from the rest of the population. So anything could happen, no? And yeah, all of those things you were mentioning, they were all present aboard the ship.
Okay, so we have another question. What are the prospects after a career in sailing? Any account on how retired sailors lived in old age?
For the period that I studied, actually, the average period that each sailor, the average period that they would work is 1 year. Average, I'm referring to average, it's 1 year. So I studied 5,000 sailors. The average period that they would serve is 1 year. It means one trip or a round trip, no? Going back and forth from Mexico and Acapulco. And then afterwards, many of them, well, some would stay in Mexico. They would intermarry with the native population. And there was a place in Mexico called shucks, I forgot the name. I'm always mentioning this place, but there was a place in Acapulco that actually became a place of the sailors. So it's Cuyuca. The place was Cuyuca, not Cuyuca. It's where they would stay every time that they were passing the winter in Acapulco, and it's like their base. From work, they would go to other part of New Spain or Mexico, for example, to the city to find another job. Because being a sailor, I mean, it's traumatizing, no? After 5 months of travel from Manila to Acapulco, the trip from Acapulco to Manila would just last for 2 months. It was a smooth sail, but from Manila to Acapulco, that's the hard one, no? So 5 months of arduous travel. So they would either go to Mexico City to find other jobs, intermarry with the women in the western part of Mexico, or they would dedicate to trading, because trading it was so profitable that I think it's better to trade than to work as a sailor. And in fact, they were just working as sailors. They were returning to this job just because there was a privilege, no, to trade. So it's actually the trade that kept them going.
Okay. So in connection with that, ma'am, can a career in sailing also be hereditary? So for example, from father to son or the next generation, can that be possible?
Well, I don't think for the low-ranking sailors, I don't think they would opt to find this job or to choose it. They wouldn't choose this job. No, it was a very hard job. But for the highest officials, for example, the pilot, sea captains, and others, it could be just because they could provide the ship. Now, remember that galleon trade, it's a Spanish sponsored, it's a monopoly of the Spanish government. However, they were renting ships from the elites, from the Iberian Peninsula, I think even from New Spain, but mostly from the Iberian Peninsula. So it's a business, no, kept by a selected family, because it's profitable. No? It's a profitable business to use your ship and have part of the profit.
Okay, so we have this question from Vincent Marie Marazonia at the chat. Thanks for the interesting discussion. Is there any account of Filipinos who ventured to South America or US via the Manila Acapulco galleon trade?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Is there any account of Filipinos who ventured to South America or US via the Manila Acapulco galleon trade?
To South America, of course. No, it was not just. I mean, they did not just go to Mexico, but they also went to Peru and even central part of America. No, they were going there, but for the same reason, no, to work as sailors and also to trade, no, simultaneously to trade. In America, referring to US. Especially in Louisiana, there's another book, no, dedicated to that study. But I couldn't remember the name of the author. But but it was more of a 18th century phenomenon of working in US, no, for example, for whaling and shipping, whaling and shipping. So yes, yes, it was like a jumping board, no? Yes, of course.
So do they wait to arrive in Acapulco before jumping board, or do they jump board along the stops?
Yeah, along the stops. It's along the route. So there were certain places, for example, Kulima. It's a favorite jumping point among the Filipino sailors. Just before now they reach the port, because at the port it would the policy would be more strict, no. But before, no, along the stops, along the route, there would be a lot of excuses. For example, they were dying, so they need to 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 leave the ship and then look for food, no. So it's a different context na if they wait until they arrive to Acapulco, because once they arrive in Acapulco, nobody could leave the ship until the captain said so. So it's more stricter in a sense.
Okay, so we are now over time, ma'am. We still have a lot of questions coming in, but we're running out of time really. So unfortunately, we have to conclude our webinar already. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us today. So any last words, ma'am?
Maraming salamat sa mga nag-participate. Thank you so much for your interest in my topic. I know it's a bit boring topic, especially because of the period, but thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here with you. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Your topic actually generated a lot of interest. So to wrap up our webinar, I'd like to promote our social media pages. The Intramuros administration is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And to watch our previous episodes, these are also available online on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And lastly, we also have we have another ILS session this coming July 1, Friday. So entitled Visibilizing the Invisible Using Social Media Sources in Reconstructing Philippine LGBTQIA+ History. So this is a pahabol episode for Pride Month. And lastly, we also have our online exhibit featuring our digitized collection at Google Arts and Culture page. So that's all, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah. So